When it comes to deciding who to vote for, it is always pertinent to look at both the good and the bad. No one party is absolutely good nor absolutely bad. There is always a percentage that is attached to the good and the bad of the person or the regime. In this sense, it is very much applicable towards Dato Sri Najib Razak and the National Coalition Party. Now, what we are going to do is look at 5 good things and 5 bad things that he and the regime had produced in Malaysia during their tenure. Now, the likes. Number 1, GST. Before we go on a rampage on that, let me tell you, from an economic standpoint, it is brilliant, the timing especially, that the GST was introduced. While the commodity slump was taking place over the world, Malaysia, being a commodity-heavy nation, needed the liquidity to ensure that the projects keep on going. The introduction of the GST allowed for the money to be collected to ensure that the economic health was maintained. Therefore, the GST was a good idea. Number 2, BRIM. Having BRIM actually helped alleviate some of the pains that were experienced by the lower income bracket groups. Although it was not going to feed them permanently, a temporary relief was very much welcomed. It was, in fact, the introduction of the social security system in Malaysia. Besides just the lower income group, the students were also given vouchers for books and electronic gadgets to help them through the process of acquiring the education, a well-rounded education. And this was not introduced by previous governments, and this should be very much congratulated. It was an amazing effort. Number 3, the One Malaysia concept that was introduced by Najib and BN at that time was brilliant, because even after 60 years of independence, we were still experiencing a lot of racial polarization. The One Malaysia concept was aimed at bringing Malaysia to the international arena as a melting pot of cultures, where everyone was treated equally and Malaysia thrived as one nation. Number 4, mega iconic projects were introduced that put Malaysia back into the global economic front. Projects such as the Tun Razak Exchange and the High-Speed Rail project was seeing great collaborative efforts between Malaysia, Singapore and even China. So these efforts were to actually increase the economic ties between such great nations. And number 5, the increase in foreign direct investments into the economy of Malaysia, especially from China. China being aimed at being the strongest economy in perhaps the next decade, had looked at Malaysia as one of the avenues to explore economic proliferation between nations. And with their direct investments into the economy, injected into the economy, it was quite the needed stimulus. And perhaps it may actually assist, if channeled correctly and wisely, assist in making Malaysia an economic power. Now, these are the 5 things that we like about the regime, or we should like about the regime. What are the 5 things that we dislike about it, or should dislike, or despise? Number 1, the poor implementation of the GST. Yes, that is the reason why the oppositions are harping onto it. Now, although being a brilliant idea, the lack of intelligence when implementing it caused the downfall of the GST. What was supposed to be 6%, because of the poor implementation, when it went through the manufacturing belt, ended up going or being compounded to to 40% when it reached the grassroots. This did not help in easing the burdens of people amidst the crazy hike in pricing throughout the whole nation. That is a first. Number two, Dato Sri Najib Razak and the Barisan National Party have been utter racists throughout their regime. Not only did they ban the non-Malays from using, non-Muslims from using the word Allah, they also did not protect the interests of the non-Malay Muslims. When the non-Malay Muslims were being abused verbally by people like Jamal and some of the religious personalities, they just kept mum. Of course, when Jamal and even the Qadis did mention that or mock some of the demigods of the Indian people in Malaysia, MIC should have stood up, but MIC being MIC pretended that the elephant in the room did not exist. Brilliant. Not so. But yes, the racist government has been very strong. The racism from the government has been very strong. And when the Chinese votes were believed to have gone mostly for the oppositions, Najib Razak on stage goes and yells, "Apa lagi Cina mahu," or "What more do the Chinese want?" This is discriminatory in so many levels and shows that the Prime Minister did not have the best interest of all races when he took the chair. This being prevalent, the question then comes, how sure are you that if he were to become Prime Minister again, that he would have the interest of the non-Malay Muslims at heart also? Now, the regime also took off, number three, the regime also took off a lot of important subsidies. Subsidies for cooking oil, edible oil, subsidies for the petrol, subsidy for sugar. Now, these are elements which determine the pricing in the manufacturing process. And also, these are basic needs that the people demand. When the subsidies are taken off from that and the prices are increased, it makes survival difficult. Of course, being born in rich and aristocratic societies, they may not understand the plight of the simple person, the grassroots. And much mockery was made when they attempted to go and buy kangkongs, and some ministers even said, "Hey, if it's difficult, eat ketchup and eat your rice with just soy sauce and boiled egg." That is utterly demeaning, and that came from Najib Razak and his national coalition. Number four, bringing in such heavy foreign direct investments creates an imbalance in the economy in Malaysia, with the small, medium, and cottage, small, and medium enterprises being the driving force of the Malaysian economy. Bringing in foreign direct investments makes it almost impossible for them to survive in this current economic climate. Clearly, economic decisions were not well made. Number five, the looming 1MDB scandal is such a heavy weight that can bring down mainly Dato Sri Najib Razak. Having not addressed it in a proper fashion, it shows how irresponsible Dato Sri Najib had been when handling the case. A very good example is when he said, when inquired on the signatures that were present on the papers or the documents, Dato Sri Najib Razak had actually mentioned that he did not know what he was signing. How could the Prime Minister or the Minister of Finance make such a trivial mistake, or even answer it so carelessly? Now, these are both the good and the bad that were visibly present for the people of Malaysia. So now, when you go to vote, think about these and cast your vote. For remember, your choice, your decision will ensure who gets the seat and who governs Malaysia.